started. As I pull this up, does anyone want to introduce themselves quickly? Just say your name, what you do, what district or organization you're from. Not all at once.
Hi, I'm Melinda. I'm the director of the AT program in New York that's called Trade. I'm looking forward to the presentation because I'm always looking for tips for accessibility for the trade staff. So I think this will be great.
Great. Thank you for joining. Right. All right. Is everyone able to see my screen, see me, and hear me okay? Someone could just answer yes. I usually don't have the chat open. It's too much going on. All right.
I see the PowerPoint and everything looks good from my end.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. So, hi, I'm Alexandra Mendez. I'm an assistive technology consultant and owner of HE Solutions, LLC. Just a little bit about my background. I started as a high school case manager and was a high school special education and mathematics teacher. Then I taught in middle school, mathematics and special education, and kind of all subjects in that role. And then I became an AT specialist. And from there, I was the assistant director of a nonprofit organization, Assistive Technology Department. And now I'm here now. So I have a lot of background in the education field, and a lot of work I do now is with schools around assistive technology. So here's a few services. I'll kind of go through this quickly. So I do evaluations and trainings, workshops, kind of like what we do today, consulting, and everything is still on-site or remote with the chaos going on in districts right now and kind of everywhere. So I am flexible to meet your needs. All right. So this is just a little bit of a conceptual framework. I'm kind of going to breeze over this and go into the picture explanations of what this all means. Because for me, the simpler explanation is usually the best one. So this model, we unfortunately, not anymore, but see a lot in schools where all the students are assigned to one assignment. Two students might not be able to access that assignment. Let's say the student on the right has a screen reader and can't access elements on the web page. For any reason, two students would not be able to. Sometimes they're given an alternate assignment or excluded from the assignment or excused altogether. So this obviously is an ideal, which we all know at this point, and we want to aim for a more inclusive model. So then in this model, we have three different assignments. The original, two students are able to access it. Now we have a different assignment for student B and a third assignment for student C. So this works better, but it's not really ideal for teachers because now you're creating 100 different versions of an assignment to meet each individual needs, and content may be lost across the different assignments. Who has time to create a million assignments for each student? It really should be more inclusive and less work. So that's where UDL comes in, the framework of one assignment that all students should be able to access. So it kind of has the components that each student needs built into it, so it's accessible for all students to access. All right, and then here are 10 ways you can improve access for students. So one is live captions. So as you see right now, we have live captions going on in Zoom. This is very exciting because this is a fairly new feature. It took them a very long time to get this up and rolling. They still have closed captioning service, which allows you to assign a typer who's also in the meeting, which is not an ideal situation. So this live captioning works pretty great and is definitely something you should turn on for meetings, and it helps a variety of students. Also with YouTube, try to choose videos with accurate captions. You can add captions if you're uploading your own videos, and you can teach students how to use closed captioning, how to turn it on in their settings. And these are all links so you can refer to later on how to get this up and running. Okay, number 9 is to use built-in accessibility features. So this really could be number 1 in my book. So I'm a big fan of the built-in accessibility features. So your iPads, Chromebooks, cell phones all have these great assistive technology features already built in, that the best part is they're free. So this really comes in handy, obviously for students, but for teachers too. So you can test your lesson using the built-in features. So if your student is using speech to text, turn on your speech to text and test it out. Are they able to type in that text box you want them to type in? Use the screen reader and click on different elements of the screen and see if it's reading how it's displaying. And then encourage students to use these built-in tools. They're free, they're a great first step, and you don't need intervention from an assistive technology specialist to just try something out. I mean, they already have it. You can go down, and here's directions. If you click on these links, it'll show you step-by-step how, but it's pretty easy. You just go into settings, you can turn things on, turn them off. One disclaimer, if you are gonna turn on something like switch access on the iPad, just know how to get out of it first, or voiceover. It can be a little overwhelming when you're kind of locked in it and all of a sudden your iPad doesn't work how you used to work it. Now you have to double tap on things. So just know how to escape, how to get out, and really play around with it. And it's great for testing out your lessons to see, are these accessible? So some of the tools we have: select to speak, Chromebox, voice typing, sticky keys, cursor highlighting, just to name a few. Screen magnifier is very useful. A lot of these can be used by using keyboard commands, so they can learn, just like a Control-C to copy, they can learn a keyboard command to zoom into the screen and zoom out as they need. And this is just a quick video just showing you how to use select to speak.
The first way I can use select to speak is to hold down the search key and then use the touchpad or mouse to click and drag a box around the content that I want read aloud. For reference, I like to hold my thumb down on the touchpad and use my index finger to then drag a box. If I just want to read one line aloud, I can hold down search and then just click that line.
Everyone should be able to access and enjoy the web.
I can press Control to stop speech at any time.
So that's just a quick way of how you can use it. So select to speak is great, especially for testing purposes, because you don't necessarily want everything read. You can just click on a certain item and see, is this part working? Is it not? Without being overwhelmed by every single thing being spoken on the screen. Okay, next is document formatting. So it's very important to use headings and styles. So built-in headings and styles. So if you see the picture there where it says normal text, and this works on anywhere in the Google environment. I'm assuming most schools are using Google right now. This is also in Microsoft Word and any sort of word processor you would be using. But in Google Docs, where it says normal text, you would just click on heading 1, heading 2. And what this does is help students with screen readers navigate the screen so they can jump to heading 1. It also visually helps the reader break up information. So a lot of times we do use headings, but sometimes they're not properly tagged as headings. We'll just bold or cap something to make it stand out, which you don't want to do, because that's visually it's making the information stand out, but structurally it doesn't have that heading 1 behind it. So make sure you use headings to display the information. So quick thing on headings. So if you don't like how the built-in styles look, that's fine. You can make it bold, make it as big as you want, change your font. And then if you click on the little drop down, there's more information in the speaker notes about this. If you go back to the presentation, if you click on the little drop down, you can actually set any of your text to be heading 1. So you would just click on match text style, and then all of the heading 1s would change to how you want it to look. So the next thing is to use an accessible font. So the Lexan series was created by an educational psychologist and picked up by Google and really taking storm. So it's a readable font that's said to improve reading speed and function. So I have a link there. You can check it out. These are free to add to Google. So Lexan Deca to Lexan Zeta. Lexan Zeta would be the widest spacing. Lexan Deca is the most narrow, and they have different font spacings in between, whatever works best for that student or person. If you go to their website too, you can actually take like a reading test and test yourself to see if it makes you read faster. So just something to try out. Just know that there are different fonts than the built-in Arial 11 that usually work better for other students. So why not check them out? Informative links. So instead of writing click here, you would write my profile or login, whatever you want the link to say. So a lot of times if you put click here, you're skimming through with the screen reader, and that doesn't really work because we're like, click here for what? Or let's say if I'm going to a website and I'm using a screen reader and I'm looking for the login button, I would pull up a list of all the links on the page. And then if I'm scrolling through, it's not going to say login. It'll just say click here, click here, click here. And I won't know which here goes to where. So it's really important to make sure you're avoiding information before a link that says follow the link below and then click here. Just making it simple, straightforward. Where's that link going to be taking you? It's going to be taking you to my profile. Great. Bullet and numbered lists. So built-in bulleted and numbered lists are important. So stars and dashes can read strange by a screen reader, and they also don't provide the structure. So a bulleted and numbered list will automatically tell the reader they are using a bulleted or numbered list. So sometimes we'll just put a dash in front of something and make a list, and visually it might look great, but it doesn't have the structure behind it that we need. So just a quick tip, an easy way to start a bulleted list, and this kind of works everywhere in email or Word. You can just hit the star button, so like shift number 8, and then hit space, and it'll automatically start bulleting for you. Just like if you were to hit the 1 on your keyboard and period space, it starts a numbered list. So it's just a quick tip on how you can use that. But it's something that we don't really think about much, but it does make a big difference for access. And then alternate text for images. So alt texts are image descriptions of what the picture is about. And I'm going to show you a video of why this is important. And then this is just an accessibility checker for Google Docs. They have a million of these out there, all free in the store. You can get them as add-ons or extensions, and it just will check your document for accessibility issues for you, and will say fix this and how and why. So really helpful. These are all links, so you can reference this information later. All right, great. So I keep needing to move our videos around here. Sorry about that. So another perk of using headings is, so this document here has headings built in, so I can just hit insert table of contents, and then a lovely table of contents appears. So it's just another perk of using headings outside of accessibility. I know all of our session notes have that table of contents. It's very easy to do, it's quick, and it really helps navigate the screen using assistive technologies. Okay, so this is just a little video of alt text for images. So I just put in 2 images from the internet into a Google Doc, and then want to show you using a screen reader what it will sound like with or without alt text descriptions.
Without alt text. With alt text. Do it now. Map of New Jersey. Colorful map displaying New Jersey counties.
Okay, great. So that's just a quick example. Obviously, the first one, it was just without alt text, blank, you didn't hear anything. So those images that you might be using to display important information like do now or do it now, they're not getting that information across if they rely on these technologies. So alt text is important. Anytime you put in a picture from somewhere else, even if it has alt text already, it's not automatically going to transfer over. So how you would do this is you just right click on the picture, click alt text, and then you just type it in yourself. So usually short is better. Just explain exactly what the picture is of. So colorful map of New Jersey's with boundaries around counties. You don't have to write picture of because they automatically are going to say that with a lot of screen readers. So graphic of, picture of, you don't need to put in, just simply type what the picture is of, and then you have the alt text description. Great. So number 7, electronic books. So hopefully by now we have all heard of Bookshare. It is a great resource. So it's even higher than this, 900,000 books and counting. It's free for US students in schools. It's a NIMAC resource, meaning if a book is not on Bookshare and the student has an IEP and a Bookshare account, you can request that it be added. And what they'll do is they'll scan in the book, put it in Bookshare, and there's a pretty fast turnaround time. So a lot of perks of using Bookshare. One is they can have their books right on their computers, on their web browsers, change the font, make it bigger or smaller, use their screen reader to read it aloud to them. They can copy and paste information right into a Word doc instead of having to look back and forth. If the student were to have a physical disability and holding the book and maneuvering it and going back and forth to type and look down, that can be very time consuming. But if they had it open on their screen right next to the document they're typing in, it can make things a lot easier and way more accessible for them. So Bookshare is really great for everybody. There are so many uses of it. And the great thing is any book you want is going to be in Bookshare. Learning Ally. So Learning Ally is preferred usually by most students to Bookshare because it's human recorded. It's an actual person speaking. We all like listening to a person rather than a computer generated voice. I have had a few exceptions. They do prefer the computer, but generally speaking, it's a lot easier to listen to something when it's read by a human. So there are less books on here than there are in Bookshare. And I would say generally they are more for younger grades. They don't have too many books past like a high school level, like textbooks or anything for college really on there. Whereas Bookshare has it all every grade level. And then it used to be free for New Jersey schools, but now they have special pricing for schools. So if it's not something your school has, definitely check it out. And then Access Text is something that's helpful for college students. It's works directly with the universities and the publisher. So what the student would do is go to their disability services office, request a book through Access Text. The school would then contact the company and they would make the book available in a PDF accessible version and send it to the student. So just giving you a brief idea of what's out there across the grade levels. So these 3 resources are really going to help the majority of students at any age or any level. All right, and this is just a quick demo of the difference. So this is a Bookshare book using Voice Dream Reader. It's an app on the iPad, which has pretty good voices, in my opinion. They are computer generated, but I think they sound pretty real. So you'll see.
Fate smiled and destiny laughed as she came to my cradle. Natalie Merchant, wonder, ordinary. I know I'm not an ordinary tiny-year-old kid. I mean, sure, I do ordinary things. I eat ice cream. I ride my bike. I play.
Okay, great. So that's a computer generated voice, but I think it's pretty real sounding. but here's the same book in Learning Ally.
Fate smiled, and destiny laughed as she came to my cradle. Natalie Merchant. Wonder. Ordinary. I know I'm not an ordinary 10-year-old kid. I mean, sure, I do ordinary things. I eat ice cream. I ride my bike. I play ball. I have an Xbox.
So just real quick, can someone just say, can you hear the audio that's playing in these videos? Because sometimes they don't play, and I just want to make sure.
Yes,
I'm not
we can hear
wasting- Okay, excellent. So the good thing about Learning Ally is they try to find a reader that's the same age level as the character. So this is an actual like 10-year-old kid sounding or reading it. And of course, with the human reader, you have the inflection that comes along with reading, like I eat ice cream. So that's why Learning Ally is preferred, but they're both great resources. And having both really is important, because if one's not available on one site, it might be available on the other. All right, accessible tables. So this is fairly new because I see it a lot in accessible tables. So this is a lot of information I'm going to throw at you here. Hopefully you can just pick like one or two things to remember next time you're creating a table. So table structure. Horizontal tables are best. So that means all of your titles are going to be in that first row across the top, opposed to having them in the first column listing down. So the reason they are best is screen readers will automatically assume that that first row is the title. So when they navigate through the table, it'll remind them what the title of that column is when they go across to a different cell. So this doesn't require you to do anything else. You're just making your table as you normally would. Just remember to put the headings on the top. It's just something that's a lot of people just don't know, and it doesn't require you to have to do anything else. That being said, you can put the headings on the side if you would like to, but then you have to freeze the row to indicate that those are headings, and there are additional steps to make it accessible. So just make it simple, and that kind of goes to my next step. So merging and splitting cells. So putting cells together, it might look great visually, but if you're navigating through using your arrow keys and a keyboard and a screen reader, it gets very confusing. You don't know what heading you're under, and it really just doesn't portray the information well. No nesting titles. So sometimes I'll show you examples of what this means in the next slide, but putting titles underneath items can sometimes be hard to portray information, because then you'll lose that first heading that you want to nest. So each item belongs in its own cell. So don't use commas or a bunch of spaces to split up the data, because it's just going to read as one continuous string of information. And visually it might look okay, but we want to make sure that every item is in its own box. And then if tables are too complicated, so let's say you have a table and you need row headers and column headers, and there's just a lot of information to display, split it up into two different tables. Like when in doubt, split it up and try to make it simple. So the more simple a table is, the more accessible it's going to be. So here's just some examples here. So the first one's a good table. I have first name, last name split up, age, grade, teacher. All of the headings are across the top. So my screen reader's automatically going to read it to me as a heading. All of the 13, 8, 7, all of the numbers are aligned to the right. So this is something I do. I catch myself doing a lot. Sometimes I will want to center align that because I think, oh, that looks funny. But if someone's using a magnification software, they know that the numbers are going to be aligned right. So they might scroll to that right area looking for the numbers. So it is more accessible if you leave it aligned how it is presented. Great. And in this second example, it looks very similar to the first one, but now we have student merged. Those two cells are merged. So when you go from Jane to Doe, it's not going to tell you what column you're in anymore because it's not going to know that they both belong to student. All right, and this example on the bottom, this is just what I was saying about making it vertical. This table looks pretty good, but it's not going to read well with the screen reader. It's going to assume that student, Jane Doe, Bobby Doe, and Alexandra Mendez are the titles, where that's not the case. And then this example on the bottom, not a lot of people do this, but just make sure you're splitting up the information. Every bit of information should really have its own home. So using the commas to do 13, 8, Mrs. Bear, it's going to be very confusing for the reader, hard to navigate because they have to go character by character to get that information. All right, so let me just check time. Okay, we're doing okay. So I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you fast. I just want to make sure we get through this. And you have any questions, like feel free after to reach out to me, type it in our notes page, and definitely use the resource I put in there and check it out later. I apologize for going so fast. 45 minutes goes by really fast. All right, so this is something you can test on later after the presentation. So I put the answer in the speaker notes. So when you're looking at it later, you can test yourself. What's wrong with this table? There's a lot of different things that are wrong with it. So you can test yourself and see, hey, do I know what's wrong with this table after? All right, great. Next is scanning documents with OCR. So this is very important. OCR, I always mispronounce this word, optical character recognition. Ooh, that one was good. So it converts images and PDFs into editable and searchable text. So I see all the time, especially with the push to virtual learning. Sometimes teachers will just take a picture or even just scan it as a PDF and upload it. But that text isn't being portrayed as text. It's coming across as just a picture of a page. So none of that text is accessible with the majority of assistive technologies out there, not just screen readers. So there are free OCR scanning apps. So what this means is when you take a picture of the page, it's not only gonna scan it, make it look nice and bring it to your computer, but it's gonna recognize that that character R is actually the letter R. And I'll show you why this is important after, but Adobe Scan is free. It's excellent. It works very well. And I'll show you an actual demo using Adobe Scan on this printed worksheet. So never take a picture of whiteboard or worksheet. It's definitely not accessible, like low on the totem pole for accessibility. So when we'll work from least to best here. So taking a picture of a worksheet would be kind of the worst accessibility wise. Step up would be taking a picture of it as a PDF using Genius Scan or one of those PDF scanners. Better than that would be using an OCR PDF like Adobe Scan. And then even better than that would be portraying information as a Word doc opposed to a PDF, but OCR PDF is fine. All right, let's play this video here. So I'm taking a picture. It's recognizing the text. It actually found the website that I printed this out from, which is pretty cool. And then from there, I just was able to copy text to a clipboard. I save it and then I'm ready to go. I can upload that right to Google Drive. I can send it to my email. I can airdrop it to my computer. So it's pretty simple, just like taking a picture. It's a free app. A lot of us have iPhones. I think it might be available
And a positive.
Let me go back here. So I was talking. So let me show you now. So I just uploaded that OCR PDF document to my computer and started using a screen reader to read it aloud to me. So let me show you how that's going to look.
A positive Han. And a positive phrase provides additional details about a noun or pronoun in a sentence. Example, the florist's eldest daughter, Lily, smelled the rose. Read the paragraph below. Underline the appositive phrases. Write them on the lines at the bottom of the page. The local florist and his wife had a sense of humor when naming their children. 3 daughters and a son. Their eldest daughter, Lily, didn't mind being named after a flower. Sylvia.
All right. I was like, when is this going to stop? So as you can see, it did a really good job. This isn't a standard font. There was a lot of pictures and colors. My printer didn't work that great. I'm running out of black ink. So, but it was still able to pick up all of the words and now read them on the computer. So that's why this OCR is very important, because it now makes this accessible.
A positive Han. And a positive.
All right. So then from there, you have this accessible version on your computer. You can just highlight everything, copy it, and then paste it into a Word doc. So now students are able to actually complete the assignment. Where are we going here? This is just skipping around like, oh, don't look, don't peek. So then students are able to now take this paper assignment and complete it on the computer. And all I did as a teacher was have to take a scan of it, copy, paste into a Word doc. Now I was able to add my own directions. I added a step-by-step element. I changed the assignment from a paper assignment to a virtual assignment pretty easily. And now it's accessible for all students. I can add my headings to this and so on and so forth. All right. Number 4, clear directions and routines. So making sure you have one digital home. I know a lot of schools now use Google Classroom, some have Hapara, Canva, Moodle, a bunch of different places that can be used as digital home, or a teacher website. All of these are great. Just make sure that every day students are going to the same home. So if you want them to be going to Google Drive every day and opening the assignment through there, make sure they know that. And the one digital home can have links to other places, but it's just a starting place to take you there, because it can be a little overwhelming and time consuming for students to have to open up and then go to a different site to start the lesson. And whereas if you have one digital home, they know where to go, they can click on the first thing and pull it up and be there. Repeat directions for similar assignments. So don't assume that we know that they are supposed to write their name or they are supposed to put the date on the top. As frustrating as it is, we have to repeat directions for students a lot. And a great way we can do this is actually through like numbered directions and checklists in Google Tasks. So let's say for pre-writing, we're constantly reminding students the steps in pre-writing. Here's just a little picture on the side of how I can use Google Tasks to repeat that across assignments for me. So students would just check off things as they complete it. So it's a reminder of them for the routines and the procedures for writing. And then it resets the next assignment, they can do it again. So you as a teacher just have to do it once, and it's a checklist for them, so they're not missing anything. Defining next steps at the end of the assignment. And of course, I know you know this as teachers, but these are really important in terms of accessibility. If you want them to return to Google Classroom, put a link in there to return to Google Classroom, because it just makes it a lot easier than having to use keyboard commands if they are using an alternate keyboard or a screen reader to then type in and get to that page. Put in a link to where you want them to go, and they will be able to get there quickly and easily. And independence is key. So the more things that we can put in, like Google Tasks here, for example, that we're not repeating to them every day to write their name on the top of a page, if they can just use the checklists themselves to do it, then that's great. And they can become more independent in completing those repetitive tasks. Okay. Number 3 is use a program the right way. So I know there are constantly trends out there in education, and some of them, they look great, but they're not very accessible. So the most recent trend I've been seeing in schools is using slides as interactive worksheets. And I like the idea of it, and it looks great, but it's definitely not accessible for students. So if you require students to type their answer in the speaker note section, they can't use their speech to text to type if that's how they're typing in that speaker note section. So there are limitations to using slides for worksheets instead of using a doc to fill in the blank. A lot of times when these are put in as pictures as the background, the picture of the worksheet is put in there. They are not OCR compatible. So none of that information is read aloud by a screen reader. So essentially the page is just blank for a lot of students. And even if the student doesn't use a screen reader for all navigation, if they're blind and require to use a screen reader for all of their computer access, even if they have a learning disability and need the screen reader to read information on the screen for them, read paragraphs, they're not going to be able to do that with this lesson here. And this is just like a picture of an example of a lesson I saw where we had a lot of issues, and it looked great and it's creative, but just use the program the way it's intended to use. Like PowerPoint is great for presentations and it is accessible for that purpose. But when you try to use it for things like this, it doesn't, creates a lot of problems for accessibility. So for data, use sheets instead of tables and Word docs. So if you have a bunch of tables in a Word doc, and you could do that same assignment in Sheets, a lot of people are like, oh, Sheets, like Excel, it's scary. We don't want to touch it. And I totally understand that, but it's not that scary. Just copy and paste your information right in there, and using a table in Sheets will be way more accessible than it will be in docs for the student. In terms of navigation, in terms of heading labels, it's going to be more accessible for them and easier to navigate. All right, use accessible sites. So this is the Web Content Accessibility Guide, which can be found on the internet. And what they did is created different categories in which makes a site accessible. So perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And then underneath each of these categories, there's a whole checklist of items that a website must meet in order to be an accessible website. So then ratings. From there, you can get a 1A rating, which is somewhat accessible. It's kind of like an okay. AA, that's really where we want our educational websites to be rated at. AA is accessible by most students. AAA, very hard to come by. The standards for AAA, a lot of websites, the majority of websites do not meet them, but it comes down to really just having black and white text and really nothing else going on, no images whatsoever. It is the most accessible, but it's not something you need to aim for. A AA rating is perfectly fine and accessible for most, if not all, of the students. All right, and then here's just a couple. I did my own like little dive into what the accessibility is of each of these sites. So Kahoot met AA standard, News ELA, Blackboard. So this means that it is accessible. Like AA is what we want for our students. They can navigate it with a keyboard, a screen reader, speech to text, everything is labeled properly, and they are meeting those standards. So Flipgrid met level A standards, so it still has a little work So all that means is you might find, this is why it's important to test it out using what your students are using. So you might find one student's not able to click on this link or do this specific task. So that's what single A might mean. So definitely test it if you are using it. So Pearson is definitely not accessible for anyone who has used the Pearson website. It's nothing is tagged properly. It's very frustrating. Usually I say just get the information on Bookshare because they'll have ebooks and textbooks that are great for most students, but for a lot of students, they are not accessible and don't work for them at all. So if that's the case, a lot of their books are available through Bookshare. So just try to use Bookshare. And then some of them don't have them listed. It isn't a requirement. It is optional. It is a requirement for some state agencies or college websites. It's becoming a requirement, but all of these independent websites that we see every day in schools, it's not a requirement and it's not listed. So generally speaking, if it's not listed, it's not very accessible. So like Pear Deck, for example, I love Pear Deck. I used it a lot when I was a teacher. But when I think of it in terms of accessibility, students are clicking on items and dragging on items on the screen. If a student is using their keyboard as the primary mode of navigation, they're not going to be able to do that click and drag activity. So it is very limiting. So just test it. There are a bunch of websites that I don't have listed here, and new ones come up every day. Just make sure that if it's a website you're putting on your homepage for the students to access, that it's actually working for all students, because some of them might be great, but behind the scenes, they're not that great, or with their accessibility, with their assistive technologies that they're using, they're not accessible. So when in doubt, test it out. Okay, and last but not least would be to explore assistive technologies. So if things are not accessible, there are ways we can still access the information using assistive technology. So read and write is a very popular, that's what I used in a lot of the demos before. Chrome extension, you can read parts of a web page, highlight, annotate, word prediction. Teachers get a free premium subscription as of now. So I don't know if that's going to change, but while it's available, I would definitely advise to download it and check it out. There are so many tools built in, and it's very helpful for a lot of students. And it can really help you in terms of testing out the accessibility of your materials, because you'll have all of those assistive technologies in one easy to use toolbar. Mercury Reader, I just like this one. It removes website clutter. So if you're on a website and they have all these ads on the side and links and things that aren't relevant to the article, it gets rid of all of that and puts the article in a nice, clean reading view. So there are thousands upon thousands in the web store. So check them out. And for that same reason, get support from an AT specialist. So it can be very overwhelming navigating the sea of assistive technologies and what's best for their students. So reach out to an AT specialist, not just me, there are other ones out there, and get that extra support trying to find what's best for your student. While using the built-in technologies is a good starting point, it might work for some students. We can really help find what's best, or even support you as teachers in making your content accessible. So right now, for example, I'm working with Rutgers. Their one department requires use of a screen reader JAWS for a peer support program in which the peers are blind. So I've been doing a lot of work with them on making all of their note-taking, intake information accessible for those students. And this has been years of work, but it's something, definitely reach out to an AT specialist for, because we're here to help you, whether it's making your lesson plans accessible, content overall, just checking your websites. Like, we are here to help with that. All right, exactly 12:45. I did it in 45 minutes. I'm so proud of myself. I probably went very fast. So if you have any questions, please, please, please reach out to me. Thank you so much for coming. I know it's been a long 2 days and you made it through, probably on information overload right now, but hopefully this was helpful. And if you got 1 or 2 things out of it, then I'm happy. Please reach out to me by email, put your questions on the notes page. I will also put in a link in there to get your feedback. I would really appreciate it. It's just for me to know what I can do better for upcoming presentations. But any questions at all, please reach out. Thank you so much again for taking the time, and enjoy your weekend. It's beautiful out finally, so great. Take care, everyone.